Jason sat alone on the cold park bench. The night wind of Chicago cut through his thin jacket like a knife. His stomach growled so loudly it almost made him laugh, but there was nothing funny about it. He had just finished his shift at the gas station and bought the only meal he could afford, a small burger and fries in a brown paper bag. He held the bag close, breathing in the warm smell. For a moment, it felt like happiness. He hadn't eaten since morning. Then he heard a small sound. A cough. Soft, weak, coming from the next bench. Jason turned his head and saw a woman sitting with a little boy. The boy looked no older than 8. His clothes were too big for him, and his small hands were shaking from the cold. The woman hugged him close, whispering something he couldn't hear. Jason froze. He didn't know them. He didn't owe them anything. But something in his chest hurt like his heart was being squeezed. He looked at his food again. Then at the boy. Jason stood up. His feet felt heavy as he walked to them. The woman's head shot up, her eyes wide. "Hey," Jason said softly. "You guys hungry?" The woman looked at him, unsure if she should answer. But the little boy nodded quickly, his eyes locked on the paper bag. Jason swallowed hard. His stomach growled again, almost louder this time. He could turn around. He could just eat it himself. But he didn't. He held out the bag. "Here," he said. "It's not much, but you can have it." The woman's lips parted in shock. She looked at him like she didn't understand why he would do that. You sure?" she asked. Jason nodded once. "Yeah. I'll be fine." The boy grabbed the bag like it was treasure. The woman whispered a thank you, her voice breaking a little. Jason turned and walked away before his stomach could change his mind. When Jason got back to his tiny apartment, he lay down on his old mattress on the floor. His stomach hurt from hunger, but he smiled anyway. "Good job, man," he whispered to himself. "You did the right thing." But as the night went on, the smile faded. Sleep came late, and when it did, it was full of strange dreams running through empty streets, knocking on doors, voices calling his name. The next morning, Jason woke up to a loud banging. At first, he thought he was still dreaming. Then he sat up and looked at the door. Someone was out there. Jason got up, still half asleep, and opened it. No one was there. But there was something taped to the door. A white envelope. Jason looked up and down the hallway. It was empty. He pulled the envelope off and tore it open. Inside was a stack of bills. His eyes went wide. 100. 200. 3. $500. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. His rent money had been stolen last week. He had been days away from being thrown out of his apartment. And now, here was $500. There was also a small note. "Thank you for your kindness. Meet us at the corner cafe at 9 a.m. A friend." Jason stood there in shock, staring at the note. Who had done this? And why did they want to meet him? By 8:50, Jason was already standing outside the cafe. He hadn't eaten breakfast, and the smell of coffee and fresh bread almost drove him crazy. At 9 sharp, the door opened. The woman from last night stepped out. Jason blinked. She looked completely different, clean, well-dressed, her hair brushed. She smiled softly at him. "You came," she said. Jason nodded. Yeah. I got your note." She stepped aside, and Jason saw 2 men sitting inside. They wore dark suits and serious expressions. "Come in," she said. Jason hesitated, but then stepped inside. The cafe was warm, and the smell of food wrapped around him like a blanket. The 2 men stood up as he approached. One of them extended a hand. "Jason," the man said, his voice calm but firm. You don't know who you helped last night. Jason's heart started beating faster. Something told him this was just the beginning. Jason's hands felt clammy as he sat down at the small cafe table. The woman he helped last night sat across from him, her son now smiling and holding a steaming cup of cocoa. The two men in suits stayed standing for a moment, watching Jason carefully, then sat down too. Jason could hear his own heartbeat. Who are you?" he finally asked. The woman leaned forward, her face soft but serious. "My name is Emily," she said. "And this is my son, Noah. You gave us your food last night. You didn't ask questions. You just helped." Jason shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "It wasn't a big deal," he muttered. You guys looked hungry." Emily smiled faintly, but the man sitting next to her spoke up, his voice calm but sharp. "You don't understand, Jason," he said. "Last night, you saved her life." Jason's mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" The second man reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded newspaper. He laid it on the table and pointed to the front page. "Local tech heiress targeted, suspects at large." Jason's eyes widened as he read the headline. The picture under it showed Emily looking exactly like she did last night, except dressed in a business suit, smiling for the camera. Jason looked up at her. He started, then stopped. Emily nodded. "My father runs Sterling Industries. We were supposed to meet security at the airport, but someone followed us. I couldn't risk going home or calling anyone, not until I knew we were safe." Jason blinked, trying to process everything. "And you were just sitting in that park?" Emily nodded again. "We had been running all day. Noah hadn't eaten since morning. I didn't know what else to do. And then you showed up." Jason sat back in his chair, his mind spinning. "So, the envelope on my door? That was you?" Emily smiled. "Yes. My father wanted to thank you." The first man spoke again. "Jason, your act of kindness didn't just save Emily and Noah from starving. You gave them a chance to wait safely until we found them." Jason swallowed hard. He didn't know what to say. "You didn't have to do that," he finally said. Emily's eyes softened. "Yes, we did. And my father wants to meet you himself." Jason almost laughed. "Wait. The Sterling? Like, billionaire Sterling? The guy on the news all the time?" Emily nodded. Jason felt lightheaded. He was just a broke kid who worked at a gas station. Why would a billionaire want to see him? They left the cafe together. Outside, a black SUV was parked by the curb. Jason hesitated before getting in, but Emily gave him a reassuring nod. The ride was silent, except for Noah humming softly in the back seat. When they finally arrived, Jason's jaw dropped. The Sterling mansion looked like something out of a movie. Tall gates, security cameras everywhere, and a driveway big enough for 10 cars. The SUV stopped at the front entrance, and a man stepped out to open the door for them. Jason followed Emily inside, his shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Everywhere he looked, there were paintings, statues, and golden lights. Then, from the top of the staircase, a man appeared. Tall, gray-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. "Jason," the man said, his deep voice filling the hall. "I'm Richard Sterling." Jason froze. This was it. The billionaire. The man whose face was on every news channel. Richard came down the stairs and extended a hand. Jason shook it nervously. "My daughter tells me you helped her last night," Richard said. "When no one else did." Jason nodded slowly. Yeah. I guess so." Richard smiled faintly. "Kindness is rare, Jason. Especially when you have nothing yourself. That's why I wanted to meet you." Jason looked down at his shoes, unsure what to say. Then Richard's expression changed. "What do you want, Jason? What do you dream about?" Jason looked up, surprised. "What do I dream about?" "Yes," Richard said. "If you could change your life, what would you do?" Jason hesitated. He thought about the nights he'd gone to bed hungry, the times he'd had to work double shifts just to pay rent, the way people ignored him like he didn't exist. Jason said slowly. "I just want a chance. To not feel like I'm drowning all the time. To do something that matters." Richard Sterling nodded, as if that was exactly the answer he was hoping for. "Good," he said. "Then I have an offer for you. But it won't be easy." Jason's heart skipped a beat. "What kind of offer?" he asked. Richard smiled, not a soft smile this time, but the kind of smile that meant something big was about to happen. "You'll find out tomorrow," he said. "But for now, you'll stay here tonight. You're under our protection now." Jason felt like the world had just turned upside down. Last night, he had nothing. Now, he was standing in a billionaire's house, being offered a chance to change his future. But somewhere deep inside, he knew this was just the beginning. Jason lay awake in the huge guest room that night, staring at the ceiling. The bed was soft, the room was warm, and there was enough food downstairs to feed him for a week, yet his chest still felt tight. Everything that happened today felt unreal. Yesterday, he was just a hungry kid with a paper bag meal. Tonight, he was in a billionaire's mansion, waiting to hear an offer that could change his life. But what kind of offer? Why him? Early the next morning, a knock came at his door. "Jason," a man's voice called. Jason opened the door and saw one of the men in suits from yesterday. "Mr. Sterling is waiting for you," he said. Jason followed him down a long hallway to a study lined with books and glowing with soft morning light. Richard Sterling sat behind a large wooden desk, a steaming cup of coffee next to him. "Good morning, Jason," Richard said. "Sit." Jason sat down nervously. Richard leaned forward, his hands clasped. "You showed something last night that most people don't have: compassion when you had nothing to give. That's the kind of character I want around me." Jason swallowed. "Sir, I don't know what you mean." Richard smiled faintly. "I want to give you a job, Jason. Not just any job. I want you to join my personal security and intelligence program." Jason blinked. "Wait, what? I don't know anything about security." "You will," Richard said simply. "I have trainers who will teach you. Self-defense, discipline, tactics. It will be hard, but you'll come out stronger than you ever thought possible." Jason's heart thudded in his chest. "Why me?" he asked quietly. Richard stood and walked around the desk, stopping right in front of him. "Because you acted with courage and heart. Because you helped my daughter without thinking about yourself. That's the kind of man I want protecting my family." Jason stared at the floor. He could barely pay rent last week. He was just a gas station kid. Could he really do this? Before he could answer, the door opened. Emily walked in, holding a file folder. She placed it on the desk and slid it toward Jason. He opened it and his eyes went wide. Inside were papers, details about him. His work history, his school grades, even his unpaid bills. "How do you know all this?" Jason asked, shocked. Richard's expression was calm but serious. "I had you checked, Jason. I had to be sure you were trustworthy. And you are." Jason felt his face flush. Part of him wanted to be angry, but another part of him felt strangely proud. "You wouldn't be here if you weren't special," Richard continued. "But you must choose. Once you start this path, there is no going back." Jason looked at Emily. She nodded softly. "You don't have to do this, she said. But if you say yes, you won't just be helping us. You'll be helping others like us, people who can't protect themselves. Jason felt something shift inside him. He remembered all the nights he had gone hungry, all the times he had wished someone would notice him, someone would give him a chance. Now here it was. A chance. Jason took a deep breath. "I'll do it," he said quietly. Richard Sterling's serious face softened into a smile. "Good," he said. "Training starts tomorrow." That evening, Jason was taken to a private training facility on the Sterling property. The place looked like a cross between a gym, a military base, and a tech lab. A tall man with a shaved head approached him. "Name's Carter," he said. "I'll be your instructor. We're going to break you down and build you back up." Jason swallowed hard. "Sounds intense." Carter smirked. "It will be. And you're going to wish you stayed home. But if you survive, you won't be the same kid who walked in here today." Jason felt fear crawling up his spine, but also excitement. He wasn't going back to the gas station. He wasn't going back to being invisible. For the first time in his life, Jason felt like his story was just beginning. That night, Jason stood outside looking at the stars. His stomach no longer ached from hunger, but something else burned inside him, a new fire. Tomorrow would be the hardest day of his life. But he was ready. The next morning, Jason woke up before sunrise. He had barely slept. His stomach was a knot of nerves, but his mind was clear. When he stepped into the training facility, Carter was already waiting. The instructor's face was hard, like stone. "You ready, kid?" Carter asked. Jason nodded, though he wasn't sure if he was. "Good," Carter said. "Because starting today, you're mine." The first few hours nearly broke him. Push UPS, sit UPS, running laps until his lungs burned. Carter barked orders the entire time, never smiling, never letting Jason slow down. "You think kindness is enough?" Carter shouted. "Out there, kindness won't save you. Strength will. Focus will. Move." Jason's arms shook as he tried to push himself off the floor. Sweat ran down his face. He wanted to quit. But then he thought of Emily and Noah sitting in that cold park. He thought of the envelope on his door, the chance he'd been given. He gritted his teeth and kept going. The next phase of training was worse. Weapons practice. Situational drills. Teamwork exercises with other recruits. Jason wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest. He messed up. A lot. One afternoon, during a timed simulation, Jason failed to clear a room fast enough. In real life, that mistake could have cost lives. When Carter called him out in front of everyone, Jason felt his chest tighten. "You don't belong here if you can't keep up," Carter said coldly. The words hit like a punch to the gut. That night, Jason sat alone in his room. He stared at his hands, sore and bruised. "Maybe he's right," Jason whispered. "Maybe I don't belong here." The next morning, Jason walked into the training hall with heavy steps, ready to tell Carter he was done. But before he could speak, Richard Sterling was there. "Jason," Richard said, his voice calm but firm. "Walk with me." They stepped outside into the cool morning air. "I heard what happened yesterday," Richard said. "And I also heard you were thinking about quitting." Jason looked down, ashamed. I'm not good at this. I don't want to mess up and get someone hurt." Richard stopped and turned to face him. "You made a mistake. So what? Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after." Jason stayed silent. Richard put a hand on his shoulder. "You gave away your last meal to a stranger. That took courage. Now you need to find that courage again." The world won't wait for you to be ready, Jason. You have to decide right now, are you going to keep running, or are you going to fight? Jason felt something click inside him. He nodded slowly. I'll fight. From that day, everything changed. Jason trained harder. He stayed after drills, practicing until late at night. He pushed himself until his body felt like it would collapse. Slowly, he started improving. He could run longer. He could react faster. He started to earn nods from Carter, small ones, but enough to know he was on the right path. Then came the real test. One stormy evening, alarms blared across the training facility. This wasn't a drill. A security breach had been detected near the Sterling estate. Carter grabbed Jason by the arm. "You're coming with us," he said. Jason's heart pounded. "What? But I'm not. No time. You're ready enough. Gear up." Minutes later, Jason was in a bulletproof vest, riding in the back of a security vehicle with Carter and two other guards. Rain hammered the windows as the SUV tore down the road. When they reached the estate's perimeter, Jason saw movement near the gate, two masked intruders trying to cut through the fence. "Jason, with me," Carter barked. Jason's hands shook as he held the flashlight and the non-lethal weapon Carter had given him. The intruders saw them and started running. Carter shouted, "Flank left." Jason sprinted through the mud, cutting off one of the intruders. His legs felt like fire, but he didn't stop. The man turned on him, swinging a metal bar. Jason's training took over. He ducked, swung the baton, and knocked the bar from the man's hand. Before Jason could react, Carter was there, pinning the intruder down. When it was over, Jason was breathing hard, his clothes soaked. But for the first time, Carter looked at him with something that almost looked like pride. "Not bad, kid," Carter said. "Looks like you do belong here after all." Jason felt a surge of relief and pride. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was proving himself. That night, back in his room, Jason stared at his reflection in the mirror. He barely recognized the person looking back. He wasn't the hungry kid from the park anymore. He was stronger now. Different. And this was only the beginning. Jason woke up before dawn, just like every morning. But today felt different. The rain had stopped. The sky outside was clear, glowing with the first light of day. He put on his training gear and walked to the main yard, ready for another drill. But when he got there, the entire team was already waiting. Even Richard Sterling stood there, hands behind his back, watching silently. Carter stepped forward. "Today is your final test," he said. "You either pass this, or you walk away." Jason felt his chest tighten. "What's the test?" Carter's face was unreadable. "You'll find out inside." They led him to a building he had never been inside before. It was dark, silent, and cold. As the doors shut behind him, Jason heard a loud buzzer. Then, suddenly, chaos. Bright lights snapped on. Alarms blared. Smoke filled the hallway. A voice came through the speakers. "Protect the package. Evacuate safely. Time limit, 10 minutes. Jason's heart started pounding. This wasn't a drill, this was a full simulation. He ran down the hallway, following the blinking red lights. At the end of the hall, he found Emily, or at least, a perfect simulation of her sitting in a locked room. "Jason," she cried. "They're coming." He forced the door open, grabbed her hand, and pulled her out. The next few minutes were a blur. Masked attackers appeared from every corner, forcing Jason to fight, dodge, and think fast. He remembered Carter's training: keep moving, stay alert, protect the person behind you at all costs. At one point, he slipped on the wet floor and nearly fell, but he caught himself just in time, pulling Emily to safety. When they reached the final hallway, two attackers blocked the exit. Jason's chest heaved. He was exhausted. But something inside him refused to quit. He charged forward, taking down one attacker with a sweep of his baton, then wrestling the second to the ground. With only seconds left on the timer, he dragged Emily through the exit and slammed the door shut. The alarm stopped. The lights turned white. And slowly, the smoke began to clear. When Jason looked up, Richard Sterling, Carter, and the entire team were standing on the other side of the glass wall, watching him. The door opened. Carter walked in first, his face finally breaking into a grin. "You did it, kid," he said. "You passed." Jason could barely stand, but he felt a surge of pride so strong it made his chest ache. Then Richard Sterling stepped forward. "Well done, Jason," he said. "You're not the same boy who walked into my house that morning. You've earned your place here." Jason swallowed hard. "Thank you, sir." Richard handed him a small black box. Inside was a silver badge with the Sterling crest engraved on it. "This is yours now," Richard said. "You are officially part of my personal security team." Jason stared at the badge, his hands trembling. It wasn't just a piece of metal. It was proof that he had finally found a purpose. That evening, Jason stood outside the mansion, watching the sun set over the city. Emily walked up beside him. "You look different," she said softly. Jason laughed a little. "I feel different. You saved me twice now," she said with a smile. "First in that park, and now in there." Jason looked at the badge in his hand. "I guess I'm just getting started." Emily's smile widened. "Good. Because we're going to need you." Later that night, Jason sat in his room, staring at the ceiling again, but this time, he wasn't lost or afraid. He thought about the boy he used to be, the one who gave away his last meal, not knowing what tomorrow would bring. That act of kindness had started everything. Now, he wasn't just surviving. He was protecting. He was building a future. Jason closed his eyes, a small smile on his face. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for the first time in his life, he was ready for whatever came next. Ending impact. Jason's story comes full circle, from a hungry boy to a protector with a mission. The audience sees his growth, feels his struggle, and celebrates his victory with him. This ending leaves them inspired, emotional, and satisfied, the perfect setup for a final line like, "Sometimes, giving away your last meal is how you feed your future."